Hi, in this lecture we will discuss what is linguistics and what is language. This lecture will provide you an outline to linguistics and language. This lecture is an introduction to linguistics and language. When we look at the etymology of the word linguistics, we find a root lingua, which means tongue in Italian. Lingua stem inflects, and we have a word linguist. The word linguist has two meanings. One meaning is polyglot. Polyglot is a person who speaks more than one language. Another meaning of the word linguist is a person who studies languages scientifically. The stem linguist inflects, and we have a word linguistic. The grammatical category of this word is adjective. As we know that an adjective modifies noun, we have a phrase like linguistic data, we have a phrase like linguistic study. Linguistic stem inflects, and we have a word linguistics. Linguistics is a field of study. Linguistics is a discipline. The grammatical category of this word is noun. So how do we define linguistics? We define linguistics as language science. We define linguistics as science of language. We can also define linguistics as a scientific study of language. So we have these three definitions. One definition is a two-word definition, one definition is a three-word definition, and one definition is one sentence definition. But what is interesting in these three definitions is the word science or scientific. So what does linguistics do? We know that linguistics analyzes scientifically the language form, the language meaning, and the language in context. Linguistics analyzes scientifically the language form in phonetics and phonology, or in morphology, or in syntax. Linguistics analyzes scientifically the language meaning in semantics, and linguistics analyzes scientifically the language in context in pragmatics. So what do we mean by the word scientific? A linguist attempts to study language in much the same way as a scientist studies physics or chemistry. That is to say, very systematically and without any prejudice. So when we study linguistics and when we observe language data, we form a hypothesis based on the linguistic data we have. Then we test the hypothesis, correct it, modify it, refine it accordingly. So here we have the language data, and the data is in two phrases. One phrase is a good man, and the other phrase is a dead tree. When we observe this data, we form a hypothesis. And what is this hypothesis we can form? That adjective always precede noun. Now this hypothesis is based on these two phrases only. And when we observe more language data, we find these two sentences. The man is good and the tree is dead. And at the same time, we find that adjectives do not precede the nouns they modify in these two sentences. So our previous hypothesis is negated and we need more linguistic data. So we have two more phrases. One phrase is life everlasting and mission impossible. So we need to refine our hypothesis. So we have come to a conclusion that adjectives in English are used in two main ways. Attributively, that is to say before noun or modifying noun, or predicatively, that is to say following a verb. At the same time, when we observe more data like court martial, attorney general, we find that there are certain phrases where adjective is not modifying noun and it is not occurring before noun. But at the same time, we can say that a finite number of borrowed adjectives are there in the English language where adjectives follow the noun they modify. So this is how a linguist works on language data scientifically and systematically. Now, what is language? What is our understanding of language? When a speaker speaks, then the hearer hears sound waves, and those sound waves are translated into speech sounds. Later on, those speech sounds are recognized either as words or phrases or sentences. And these words, phrases, and sentences are further translated into or understood as meaningful thoughts and ideas. So we can say this human mind is a sophisticated translating machine which translates sound waves into meaningful thoughts and ideas. So what is language? Now we will take Saussure's view, and Saussure considers language as a psychological property of human beings. Now what is the meaning of the word psychological? Psychological is something that is related to mind. Further, Saussure says language is a system of systems. Saussure says that language is a system of differences, and Saussure also says that the relationship between signifier and signified is arbitrary. We will discuss these three statements one by one. What do we mean by language is a system of systems? As we have seen previously, that linguistics analyzes scientifically the language form. And this language form is studied under phonetics and phonology at sound level. This language form is studied under morphology at word level. And this language form can be studied under syntax at sentence level. So language is a system of system. Phonetics and phonology is one system, morphology is another system, and syntax is another system. But all these systems are interrelated, interlinked. We have different sound units, we have individual sounds units, and when we combine these sounds, we have a syllable. When we combine syllables, we have words. And when we combine words, we have phrases, clauses, and sentences. So language is a system of system. Now, what do we mean by language is a system of differences? I give you one example. There is a word cat and there is a word mat. There are three sounds in the word cat, and there are three sounds in the word mat. Only the initial sound is different. And what is this difference? In cat, the initial sound is k, and in mat, the initial sound is m. So cat is cat because the initial sound is k, not m. Mat is mat because the initial sound is ma, not ka. So language is a system of differences. This is basically the meaning. And we proceed further. The relationship between the signifier and signified is arbitrary. For that, we need to understand the concept of sign given by Saussure. Saussure says everything depends upon relations. What does it mean? Saussure says that signifier and signified are two sides of a piece of paper. So we have a sign, and if you consider sign as a piece of paper, then the one side of that piece of paper is signifier and the other side of that piece of paper is signified. And when one side interacts with other sign, language becomes meaningful. So let's understand this concept of sign with this diagram. First thing is Saussure talks about linguistic sign and no other sign. And Saussure says that signified takes precedence over signifier. And both signifier and signified are psychological entities. As we have discussed, the meaning of the word psychological, that is something related to mind. So the meaning of signified is concept or sense, and the meaning of signifier is sound patterns. And as Saussure said that both signifier and signified are psychological entities, that means that sound patterns and the concept both are there in our mind. And first we have the concept and then we have a sound. For example, I'm producing certain sounds. That means those sound patterns are already there in my mind. That's why I'm in the position to produce them. Not only those sound patterns are already there in my mind, but at the same time, the concept, the sense that is associated with those sound patterns that are already there. And sense and concept, they take precedence over signifier. For example, the word tree. Tree is signifier. When I pronounce, I have three sounds, t, r, e. And at the same time, when I pronounce tree, then whosoever is the hearer, the image, the concept, the sense of any tree occurs in the mind. So tree as a sound and the image of the tree, both are both are like a piece of paper. Both are like two sides of a piece of paper. So you can't have a sound pattern without concept. You can't have a concept without sound pattern. That means for a sign to qualify as a sign, there must be sound pattern as well as the concept associated with it. Now, there are certain fallacies which are associated with language, and generally a lay person or a layman uh, who is not aware of linguistics believes in these fallacies. So what is a fallacy? Fallacy is a false statement or misconception. And a layman considers that some languages are advanced. Now, technology can be advanced. Certain cultures can be advanced. But you can't say English is English is an advanced language, but let's say uh, Swahili is not an advanced language. This is a fallacy because when we talk about that some languages are advanced, we are talking about that there are more words in that particular language. There are words related to science and technology. There are words related to philosophy and economics. There are words related to anthropology. But this is not the correct criterion to define a language. We can't say some languages are advanced. This is wrong. This is a fallacy. At the same time, we can't say that some languages are beautiful. Here, beautiful means uh, mellifluous, sounding good, as some people believe that French is a mellifluous language and they prefer French over English. So this is not uh, not a scientific statement. It is a fallacy. Again, certain cultures can be primitive, certain cultures can be advanced, but if you say some languages are primitive, this is a wrong statement. This is a fallacy, and this is not correct linguistically, because all languages have same degree of complexity, same degree of flexibility, same degree of productivity. And the thing is, we need to study those languages, and when we study those languages linguistically, then we find that all languages are equal in terms of productivity, flexibility, in terms of complexity and creativity that is associated with them. There is another fallacy that some languages have grammar. Now, this is again wrong. So when we talk about grammar in linguistics, generally we talk about phonetics and phonology, we talk about morphology, we talk about syntax, and it is not possible that only in one language we have sounds, in other language we do not have sounds. It is not possible that in one language we have words and in other language we do not have words. And at the same time, it's not possible that in one language we have syntax, how words combine and make sentence, phrase, or clause, and in another language we do not have. All these fallacies are associated with language. Some people believe that a certain language is a divine language, certain language is a superior language. It is true that some religious texts were written in certain languages. Those texts are holy, those texts are sacred for certain cultures. But this does not qualify that because those texts they are written in some languages, those languages they become advanced, or those languages they become holy and other inferior to them. So these are the things that we have seen in this introductory part. So we have an outline of linguistics, and we have also seen what is language. We have seen Saussurean view on language. So this is for the day. Thank you all. We will discuss other such concepts in a future video. Thank you for watching.